Hi, welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, my good buddy, Greg Mannarino, founder of TradersChoice.net. And we're just going to have a conversation. It's going to be a frozen two-shot. And Greg, you sent me something pretty amazing, and it was this picture, and hopefully people can see this. And it's the new Fed head, and if everybody can see down there at the bottom, U.S., this is Jerome Powell, U.S. on not on a sustainable financial path. And he said that in testimony in Congress under oath. And I want to start right there. Whoa, that's a truth bomb that a lot of people weren't expecting to get. What's going on?
Craig, when I saw that and I was watching that live, I was waiting for the market to drop like 500 points in the blink of an eye, and actually that did not happen. Could you imagine for 2 minutes if, let's say, the CEO of company XYZ came out and said, listen, everyone, I'm sorry to tell you, but our corporation is not on a good fiscal path. I mean, the stock would sell off so rapidly, I think people's heads would spin around. It's just, look, it's part of the entire thing. It's part of the, it's very hard to even get a word that will fit into it's utter madness that we have here. People are whistling past the graveyard. They think everything is fine. They believe stocks are fairly valued. They have no conception of what's actually going on here behind the scenes. How this is all fake. It's all being propped up. It's just the truth.
But I want to interrupt. I've heard all this. I heard Neil Cavuto on. I'm talking about the tariffs that the president was going to put on. That Bush 43 put on tariffs, and the market, crashed. But you're saying, so did the market crash because of the tariffs, or do you think the market started getting freaky because of the what the new Fed head said? Hey, we can't handle this anymore. We can't. I mean, he didn't say 3 or 4 years down the road this is going to blow up. He said we're not on a sustainable fiscal path. Is that what caused this big gyrations? Thursday was down 400. Friday it was way up, then way down, then it closed about 70 points down. I think it was way down. What's going on with the markets? It didn't look like that investing is going on. It looks like it's convulsing, like it's puking on itself.
Yeah, it does look like that. It's kind of funny. The day before this announcement about the tariff came out, the Dow Jones Industrial Average peeled off about 400 points. The day this tariff was announced, actually, let's back up a moment here. This is no news to the market. President Trump has been talking about tariffs or possible imposition of tariffs since the election here. This market already had it priced in. They started talking about how he was going to announce on national television and international television about these tariffs the day before and the entire morning. The sell-off that we had in the market had nothing to do with him announcing the tariff. But let me say this. Hold on,
I want to just interrupt. I'm sorry. So it had nothing to do with them announcing the tariffs. Nothing at all. Why?
Nothing at all.
Why are they beating that dead horse?
Well, because look, the mainstream financial channels, the mainstream media, they only want to do one thing, and that is to try to cause as much strife for President Trump as humanly possible. They want to blame everything on this guy here. The market sold off for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only, the day that this happened. Number one was Powell talking before Congress. The man sounded like a little boy in an old man's suit. I mean, I don't know another way to put it. He did not sound confident. He seemed like he was frightened for most of it, and this rattled the confidence in the market. It had nothing to do with Trump. This was the market saying, hey, you know what? I'm calling no confidence on you, Mr. Powell, because the guy really sounded like a timid little, schoolboy sitting there before Congress. Before the banking committee. It's just too insane. But they need to find a narrative to blame this on Trump. So they said, hey, Let's get this tariff thing, because the market just happened to sell off on the same day, although it was being mentioned at least the day before, and everyone has known about this since the election. But if you noticed what happened the day after, the market completely reversed. From on Friday, the market was down at one point. The Dow Jones down 400 points. We finished down fractionally, with every other major index higher. As a matter of fact, I bought calls across the board on Friday, and I told people that this was going to happen more than likely. Look, here's the issue with this market, and people want to know what's going on here. It's going in one direction right now, and that is higher. Just like I've been explaining to people for the longest time. It's not real. It's fake, it's rigged, and they're going to continue doing this for as far as the eye can see until we hit the wall. And how do we know we're hitting that wall, Greg? Something you and I have spoken about for, I don't know, years and years and years, and that is the bond market. When they have an uncontrolled sell-off in the bond market, that is when the market's going to crash, not before that time. Everyone who is looking at the stock market, Greg, is looking in the wrong place. And I can't stress that enough. That's all I've been saying for I don't know how many years now, but that's what people do. Forget about the stock market. You want to know where stocks are going to go? Look at the bond market. Now, they have been propping up this bond market like we have never seen before over the past several months. And as you brought up in your weekend wrap-up, I say go to my website, traderschoice.net, go look at the chart of the bond market, and your eyeballs are going to explode. It's just unbelievable amount of propping up and rigging. They got to suppress those interest rates, and they will until they lose control.
How do you?
And when they lose,
go ahead. No. When they lose control, go ahead.
Yeah, when they lose control, they're not going to be able to keep those rates suppressed anymore, and then we're going to get the meltdown in the stock market. Look, the stock market is in a bubble that is being suspended on the back of the debt bubble. So when the debt bubble pops, every other subsequent bubble connected to it is going to burst along with it. That's where you need to look. Forget the stock market. These gyrations mean really nothing to me. It's the truth. All it does is present me with a trading opportunity, and a lot of guys like me too. But it's the bond market that tells the story.
How did they get? We were at 2.95. I'm just going to leave you up. We were at 2.95 on the 10-year Treasury, and they set a lot of rates out there, mortgage rates off the 10-year Treasury, and then it goes down in the 2.8s again. And you were telling me that you think, and you have some sources also that say they think that they're giving dollars to foreign countries to buy our bonds, and giving them hundreds of billions of dollars to buy our bonds to drive the rates down. Is that what they're doing?
Greg, that makes perfect sense to me, and I really think this is the most incredible thing that I've heard yet, that central banks are liquefying other world central banks and having them buy another country's debt using their own currency. It's an incredible situation, but it makes sense. And if this really is happening, and I believe it is, this is an act, and we spoke about this, of desperation, just like you said, if this is actually happening. And it makes sense that it is happening, because look, how many times have you and I spoken about, and it's a lot of people who understand that they're going to do things that we can't even believe yet. They're already doing things that we can't believe to keep this all propped up. This is a fake environment, and the market is at one point going to achieve its fair value. That's the only job of these markets. They're not being allowed to do that. We've had suppressed interest rates for now an entire decade. This has allowed bubbles to form all over the place, inverse bubbles, bubbles to the upside, capital malinvestments. I mean, it's really the most fake environment in world history.
But I want to come back. I want to come back to the bond market though, real quick.
Yep.
And you're telling me this is a new wrinkle, that they're basically giving dollars to the ECB, and they're giving us euros, and we're buying their euro debt, and they're buying our U.S. debt, and the Japanese are giving us yen, and we're buying Japanese bonds, and that we're giving the Japanese dollars, and they're buying our. Is that what you're? That just sounds crazy. But is that what you're telling me is going on?
Well, Greg, this is what I'm hearing here through the grapevine. I know a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people, and I don't have any direct proof that this is happening. But would anyone here really? Let's put a show of hands. How many people here would be in utter shock if this is happening? I mean, they are doing some kind of a coordinated scheme to keep this entire scheme propped up, because that's all this is. It's a charade. And I think this charade is going to continue for a little while longer here until they're ready to let the hammer fall. And they're going to. Again, it's a setup for a wealth transfer, a legal wealth transfer from one group of people to another group of people. And that's what's going to end up happening in the end here. Everyone is all gleeful and all happy with their 401ks and investment plans. And you got the Confederacy of Dunces out there, the mainstream financial channels, all gleeful and happy. And everything's just like they were at the top of every single other bubble. I mean, I'm not too old to remember the dot-com bubble, Greg. Neither are you, and a lot of other people. We're not too old to remember the one in 2008. Sounds eerily the same, except this one's much worse. Much, much worse. And they're going to prop up this thing until it hits the wall, and there's going to be a moment of reckoning. There's no doubt about it. When, I don't know. I frankly don't care. I just want us all to be ready for when it does happen.
Let's just talk about Powell for a minute. I'm going to leave you up here. You sent me this picture, and you went, dude. I mean, all you did was send me this picture, which I held up to people on the weekly news wrap-up. And it's Powell, U.S. not on a sustainable fiscal path. Why would he testify in Congress? I never heard Yellen say that. I never heard Bernanke say that. I may have heard Greenspan say it a long, long time ago. But I never heard Yellen say that. We were not on a sustainable fiscal path. Maybe she did, I don't know. Why would Powell get in there and say that so early on in his tenure at the Federal Reserve? In other words, hey folks, we can't keep this going. What do you suppose is going on? Why did he say that?
Well, because it's the truth. And everyone, I think, knows it.
Yeah, but Fed bankers, they lie. They don't tell the truth. You know it's the truth. I know it's the truth. And I'm shocked he told it. Why did he tell the truth?
I think this guy was nervous, honestly, and he's getting shook up here. I think maybe the weight of this position is maybe weighing on him a little bit too much, and that's really, again, what sparked the sell-off. It wasn't the tariffs. This was Powell. That the market is saying to itself, hey, you know what? This guy really might not have our back as much as Yellen did. At the same time, I think he's going to play ball, and I've talked about this here. I think that's why he was chosen, to make sure the stimulus keeps on going, the bond buying keeps on going, the interest rate suppression keeps on going for as far as the eye can see. The schemes like we were just talking about before, central banks supporting each other with their own currency, buying each other's debt with currency being supplied by the other central bank. I mean, you could go on and on here. This is, and I mean this, literally some kind of fantasy land that's just with the truth is stranger than fiction. But that's the environment we're in. It's just the truth.
Paul Tudor came up and said that he's a legendary trader. Paul Tudor Jones, I should say. Let me finish his name out. And he's warning that the Fed is going to lose control. Is that what Powell is worried about? Why he looks like he's scared, nervous, that he's blats out? We're not on a sustainable fiscal path. Is it what Jones says? Is that inflation's getting ready to pop up? And the bond market could spike higher. This is what Jones says. You're one of your counterparts in the trading world, and he's warning that the Fed could lose control. Is that what we're getting here? That basically Powell thinks he's losing it. He's slipping through his hands.
Well, it's worse than that, Greg. It's worse than that. They've already lost control. If they were in control, would they still be buying bonds like they are, would they still be trying to get it right? They can't unwind this in a normal way. They've created a system of bubbles, and they are well aware of this. And these things tend to collapse very violently when they do. If the Federal Reserve or any of these world central banks were really in control, do you think we'd be in the situation that we are in right now? Absolutely not. All they've done is liquefy the world, buy with debt, buy everything that they can in sight to try to keep everything propped up. This is not control. This is some kind of a Frankenstein that they've created here by trying to prop everything up. So is there going to be a moment where this is just, that's it? Of course there is. But in my opinion, what they're doing now, it is not control. It's some kind of a Band-Aid fix or trying to sew together body parts. This is a corpse here that's on life support, and that's all it is. So, and there's going to be a terrible moment of reckoning. Inflation, forget about it. Of course, there's going to be massive inflation. They can't stop it. We have all of this extra printed currency, and as well as digital currency, floating all around the world. At one particular point, there is, no matter how fast the Fed tries to raise rate, they cannot stop all of that extra currency chasing the same amount of goods. You do not have to have a PhD and I don't know what to figure this out. All you have to do is have one or two maybe functioning brain cells. So they're in a lot of trouble here. Of course they're going to lose control. What are they going to do? Let's say we start getting some real inflation. They're going to start hiking super fast. Well, what's that going to do? Bam! There goes your debt bubble, and then we're done. Back to the Stone Age. Stock market, Dow 6,000 will probably seem like a dream come true, because we might even go lower than that. I mean, who knows what the real numbers are? Nobody knows. No one's smart enough to say that. And you can have these people on the mainstream Confederacy of Dunces channels over there, and they're going to tell you, oh, this market is fairly valued. Really? Based on what? How can they tell us that, but when no one actually knows what the true value of debt is? When we have world central banks negative in some parts of the world, here in the United States, suppression for 10 years, there's no way to put a true value on any asset whatsoever.
What should people be looking at in the next few weeks? What could knock this fine rider off his white charger in the stock market?
I think the stock market's marching up. They're going to continue to prop this up, especially with the midterms coming here, the midterm elections. They're going to make sure that everything is on the right track. Everyone's feeling rich. Housing is going to continue going up. Again, the distortions are going to get worse, probably much worse, before we get a correction to fair value. And that is going to happen, because that is the only job of the market, to determine fair value. And
you don't see it crashing this year. I mean, you don't see it falling out of bed this year.
I have no idea when we're going to hit this wall, Greg. I honestly don't even think about it anymore. It's gotten, this is gone.
But why do you not think about it? Because you're already ready for it when it happens?
Well, of course, I have all my, I'm ready for whatever comes down the pike here, of course. But why am I not worried about it? Because as a trader, I trade the market I have, not the one I want, not the one I'm dreaming about, not the one I'm even thinking about might happen. Because you got, as a trader, you almost got to live in the moment in many, many ways. Okay, what's going on today? How can I make this market work for me today? On Friday, when the market was going all over the place, I was bullish. I bought calls on IWM, Lulu, Netflix. I made almost 23% profit in one day trading a market that was all over the place. This is a great environment for someone like myself. It's the truth, and it's a setup for what's coming. And people have no idea what is coming, but they're going to lose. They're going to lose it. They're going to lose everything. Worse than last time if they're not ready for what's coming, and that means watching the bond market. That moment when they cannot continue to prop it up, when those bond vigilantes really come out and start dumping all this stuff, and world central banks have no choice, but they're already the lenders of last resort. I mean, who what individual on this planet would go out and buy a bond here and lock up their cash for a decade or more, which is earning negative or zero if you factor in the real rate of inflation? Who would do that? Well, it's only the central banks, because no institution, no individual will be locking up cash like that when you could be trading a market like I am and pull off 23% in one trading day. So this just shows you all the fakery that's going on. This is not debt that's being bought by people that think they're making a good investment. This is debt that's being bought up by world central banks, just like we spoke about, that are liquefying each other, that are buying each other's debt just to keep this propped up. That's what we're in, and there's going to be an unbelievable price to pay for this at one point. I don't know, Greg. We probably are marching into, again, and we've spoken about this and probably even talked about it on your show, a worst case scenario. When? Don't know. Got to be ready for it, though. And 99% of the people are going to be caught so off guard by this that their head is going to spin around like The Exorcist. It's really the truth.
And one last thing that I wanted to get on here, I'll just stay on here with you. One of the things that I noticed, and I talk to you 2, 3, 4 times a week, is you watching the bond market and saying, oh my gosh, they went in and bought the bond market. I mean, just for the last couple of months, have they done something unusual, or are they raised the bond buying just in the last few months, or have they always been doing this? Because it seems to me that you've been telling me about their overnights, that before it opens in the morning, they're buying tons of bonds. Or it opens up and the bond market starts shooting up, they're buying tons of bonds. Have they done something different here?
Sure. They're competing with the bond vigilantes that we've been hearing about.
So they're buying more in the last few months than you've seen ever.
They're buying more because they have no choice, because the bonds are being sold off. And then when they're getting sold off, they're propping it right back up again. It's an incredible situation. I urge people to look at this. I mean, I have a live chart right on my website, traderschoice.net, right side of the page underneath the chat room. You can watch the bond market action. It's incredible. Like I've been saying, your eyeballs are going to explode.
So they're doing something hyper unusual that hasn't just been in the last few years. Just in the last few months, they've been buying way more bonds than you've ever seen. Is that a good?
Sure. I mean, and think about why. Because we've been watching rates creep up on their own without the Federal Reserve doing anything here. The market is kind of anticipating what's happening and what's going to happen. And on top of that, we got people trying to punish the bond market, just dumping this stuff here. So when they're dumping all this stuff, that's causing rates to rise, and that's putting pressure on the stock market, which they do not want to have. They want that market moving in one direction, and that is higher.
How low can they? This is the question I've been asking you. I mean, when you're telling me this, that they're doing something unusual, it's just, I've never seen this before. You said that to me a couple of times. I've never seen it like this before. I've never seen them buy bonds.
It's unbelievable.
Okay, so you've never seen them buy bonds like this. This is from a professional trader. You've never seen them do this before. And this is the last
not like this. When you have a let's just talk about the 10-year yield. When you brought it up earlier, we have 10 basis point swings in a matter of a day now. It seems like it's normal. It's incredible. These are huge moves that usually don't play out in a day. Usually it takes weeks or months to play out. No, not anymore. That says something to me.
But last question, and I've asked you this before, and you sit on here and you tell me this stuff, and I am not a trader, and I don't tell people to trade unless they're going to do a lot of work, because I now hear you on the phone. You're up at ODark 30. You're out in the Pacific time zone. I think you're in Las Vegas, and you're up when the market's up. You're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. You work. You're calling me sometime at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, dude, man. Hey, I mean, you're into this, okay? I can attest to that. You 1 week you say, man, I think it's going to go right back up. The next week, man, I think it's going to sell off. That's what happened in the last couple of weeks. It's just like, dang. I mean, the big swings. Anyway, my question, how long can they do this?
Greg, this has gone on so much longer than anybody, I think, would have expected. No one expected. Look, did any one of us out here expect QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, QE3, QE whatever we're in right now, because they have never stopped buying bonds. As you well know, and maybe your new listeners don't understand this, the Federal Reserve is not magic. They don't have any power, supernatural. They have to, if they're telling you they're going to keep rates low or normalize their balance sheet, which we should talk about real quick before we go, in a slow fashion, that means the Fed has to get into the market and buy the bonds to keep the rates suppressed. That's the truth. Before I let you go, talking about the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, I want people to look for themselves at what I'm about to tell you. There was a crime committed before Congress this past week, and no one batted an eyeball. What am I talking about? The Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Powell spoke about how the Federal Reserve's balance sheet is shrinking. Well, this is a lie. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is not shrinking. And how you can tell is go to the Federal Reserve's own website where they post a quarterly balance sheet report. I am going to urge you to not look at month over month. Month over month can fluctuate. You need to look at year over year. If you look at year over year, you will see that the Fed's balance sheet is getting larger. It is not shrinking. So there goes that whole theory. But and that's the other thing that really got under my skin here, Greg. Not one of our Congress people, not one, took a moment to just go look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet and say, hold on a minute, Mr. Powell, how come year over year the balance sheet is getting larger? Because they're inept. Because they don't even want to.
Because they have to buy the bonds.
Well, that's one thing. And all they wanted to do is pander. If you notice what happened when it was testifying before Congress, not the banking committee, they were pandering to their bases. It didn't matter anything else. All they want to do is get reelected. They don't want to ask this guy anything serious that might rock the boat, because they have a lot of, they're all multimillionaires, most of these Congress people anyway. So they don't care. But it's a sad thing. It's a sad state of affair.
They can't shrink their balance sheet. They'll dump debt onto the market. They'll drive up rates. They cannot shrink their balance sheet. As a matter of fact, they're doing the opposite is what you're saying.
Yeah, and like I said, don't look at the month over month. Look at the year over year, and you will see that what I am saying is correct. If you look at the last data, for example, if you look at the last data that is on the Fed's that quarterly report and go back 1 year, you will see that it is larger. It is not smaller. Month to month will fluctuate. So you can maybe look at the previous month and then look at where we are now, and you might see a discrepancy there. But if you just go back a year, that's all these people in Congress had to do, is go back a year, and they would see that it's getting larger. It is not getting smaller. It is the crime of the century. It really is.
Gregory Mannarino, founder of TradersChoice.net. Greg Mannarino, thanks for coming on and having a conversation about the markets and what they're doing. It's kind of scary. I mean, they're going to hit the wall. We don't know when. A lot of people thought it would be in 15. I thought it would be in 15. And at 16, election year, no. 17, I thought it was going to hit the wall. In 17, it didn't. I mean, it took off. You even said that after the election in 16, in November, right after Donald Trump got elected, you said, this is a game changer. Quote, this is a game changer. Market's going to go up. And sure enough, it did. And but now you're looking at the wall. Now you're not looking for it to go straight up. You're afraid of the wall. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. The wall's coming. Every day we get closer to that wall. Don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. Who knows? Gregory
Mannarino, TradersChoice.net. Thanks for coming on. USAWatchdog.com. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Great to be here. Thanks.